Hi, readers. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. Today, we're going to talk about memoirs. And the reason we're going to talk about memoirs today is because I've really been feeling led to read new memoirs and make the time for them. And then I've been just kind of thinking about some of my favorites in order to remind myself why these are important. It's an important nonfiction genre to me. So I'm going to share 5 of the memoirs that I have really enjoyed over time. Some I've read years ago, some I've read more recently, and maybe that will spark your interest in them, and maybe it will spark your share with me about memoirs that you love, so I will have some more to choose from and think about before I dive into reading one before the end of the year, at least one before the end of the year. So let's get started. So this is an interesting one. Not a lot of people love this. Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert is a memoir that I have loved. I read this back in 2008, and I know this because I read it as my sister was dying. She was losing her battle with cancer, and it was a very challenging time for me. And yet some of the writing and some of the things she shared really inspired me in that time and were really important to me. So I've never really forgotten not only this book, but where I was when I was reading it. I know some people that don't love this novel, and so that is certainly okay. I have no need for anyone else to love it, but I know some people that don't love it. Some people felt like it was a bit of a scam because she was paid ahead of time to go on this little trip around the world. But regardless, this is probably the only thing Elizabeth Gilbert has written so far that I have enjoyed. So there's that. So this, I'm trying to remember, she goes to Italy, I think. I know she goes to Italy, Bali, and Italy, India, and Indonesia. That's right. She goes to India. And she has a very different learning that happens in each place. And I just loved it. It gave me a place to escape to when I was really grieving over the end of my sister's life, and it gave me a perspective on healing and growth through difficult times. She was actually going through a divorce when she struck out on this journey, and again, I was experiencing this loss of my sister, whom I loved very much. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure I gave it 5 stars, and I maybe should reread it and see how I feel about it now in a different time of my life. This one by Lauren Graham, Talking as Fast as I Can. I had actually just finished all of Gilmore Girls again and was anticipating the release of the new Year in the Life series that came on Netflix, and this came out, I think, right before that did. I love Lauren Graham, although I can't say that I've watched her in anything except for Gilmore Girls. I know she actually has a role in the Extraordinary Playlist, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist now, and I've seen one episode of that because my partner has watched it. I never watched Parenthood, but I really like her, and this was a fresh, cute, light book that also actually gave some great practical tips for living and writing and coping with different things and just being authentic. And I really enjoyed it. I think the challenge for Lauren Graham is probably that people have put her into if they've watched Gilmore Girls, they expect her to be Lorelai everywhere she goes, and if they watch Parenthood, they expect her to be that character. So I suspect she has a little bit of trouble with that. But I liked this a lot, and it was easy to read, and it was a fast read for me for sure. I suspect she would be a good audiobook too, because she probably reads it. This was like oh my gosh, and these next 2 are kind of a theme. Oh my gosh, I want to know more about this so much. So Leah Remini's Troublemaker was a memoir that was written after she left Scientology, which has always fascinated me. That whole experience for people, I've just always been sort of connected to learning about other religious theologies is important to me over time, and this one is just not one that I understand easily. So I don't have any judgment around anyone who is a Scientologist. I'm just struck by how that would not work for me. But I was so curious about Leah Remini, and I had watched her show, and I'm trying to think of I had watched a little bit of King of Queens, but that was not the one I watched. I actually watched the show with her family, It's All Relative, Leah Remini reality show I watched. And so this came out around the same time, and I just really wanted more about that experience of leaving the church, the experience of becoming a Scientologist, and the experience of leaving, because that seems to be a church that is hard to separate from, because when you separate from the church, you have to separate from, or the other people that you love in your family or friends can't associate with you in any way. So you either really leave with your whole family intact or you don't. And that's tricky too. So talks about her rise into her celebrity status and into acting. And it also talks about her teenage years and how Scientology for a long time really benefited her and saved her in many ways, and then how it didn't. Highly recommend it. Almost unhauled it a while ago on a to read or to keep or not to keep, and I kept it, but my partner's read it. I've read it. I may read it again. It's really very fascinating. And then in that same vein, this is another one of my favorites. Martha Beck's Leaving the Saints is a memoir about her life as in the Mormon church and her family and the way she was involved in that. And it says, the subtitle is How I Lost the Mormons and Found My Faith. So she is an example of someone who has a repressed memory that comes up suddenly, and the trauma that is associated with that is profound. I have studied this in college, as well as I've had experiences in real life with people who have had this happen, and it is really a challenging experience. So you have this deep-seated trauma as a child that you then repress, and it sometimes just suddenly comes up on its own because it needs to be addressed. But Martha Beck's father was a high elder in the church, and he was an apologist, as I recall, which is a person who explains theology and defends it against attacks where people believe that it's not accurate or true or rooted in belief. And the Mormon church, for me, like the Scientology experience, is a very different religious and spiritual journey than I have taken in my life. So it's sometimes hard for me to understand. I've had friends who were Mormon, and I still do have friends who are Mormon. And, so I know a bit about it. But what I loved about this was it was her personal journey into this experience with her kids and her family, and understanding what happened to her and her relationship with her family as a result. And I have a lot of books by Martha Beck. They are typically self-help because she is a columnist for the Oprah magazine, and she's a coach, although not trained in the same domain of training that I've been trained in, but she has a coach training company as well. And I really respect her work, but this one is by far my favorite that she ever created, and I highly recommend it. And it's fairly old. This came out, I read this years and years ago in 2005. So really loved it, really did. Flew through it. And then finally, my favorite of all of these that I read last year actually was Becoming by Michelle Obama. I listened to this. It is read by Michelle Obama, and it is the story of her life, essentially from growing up in South Side of Chicago to entering the White House as First Lady, and then finally exiting the White House, and kind of a little bit of what was happening after his 8-year term ended. Barack Obama's 8-year term ended here as President of the United States. I love Michelle Obama. I have loved her since I saw her on the campaign trail supporting her husband. I love her even more because she was raised in the South Side of Chicago, and she talks a lot about that experience growing up and her parents, her mom and dad, how they influenced things, her journey into college and into, of course, interning and then working at a law firm and then meeting Barack Obama, the journey to her infertility and then finally becoming a parent, and how that experience was different for her than she expected, and how being a parent uh, in her marriage was a challenge. So she's very candid about all of the things that were happening in their lives together as well as before they met, and the journey with her family. And I just adored all of it. It made me laugh, it made me cry. I just loved her even more. Gave it 5 stars. It was one of my I think it was my favorite nonfiction read of 2019, and I just can't say enough about it. And there is now a documentary called Becoming on Netflix, which is sort of the story of her book tour journey after the book was released. And it's also fun. And I may watch that again very soon because my partner just actually finished listening to this one. So she's ready to watch that with me. Well, I really recommend all of these. If you haven't already taken a look, they're some of my favorite memoirs, and some of the best, I think, experiences that we can have is understanding someone's life, especially if they're very different than we are, and understanding their journey in whatever way it takes shape and form, whether it's in and out of a spiritual belief or in and out of a position of power, as Michelle Obama describes, or if it is just out of a grieving time or out of something that was very special, like a TV series or like a marriage, and then is no longer there and is a period of recovery. So I just think those are great opportunities for us to learn from other people, to be inspired by them, to share their experiences and to feel them in our hearts, and to just know what other people are going through, whether they're celebrities or or whether they're just everyday people. That being said, most of these people have become pretty popular. And so if you're a person who likes to understand more about the lives of people who are well known, I'd say these are good picks. Thanks for watching today, and I can't wait to see your comments below, and I wish you a very happy reading day. Bye.